What's up, everybody? Welcome to our chat for HBO's The Last of Us Episode 5. We are going to jump into spoiler territory, but not right off the get-go. So if that is a concern, hang around for a few minutes, pop off, and come back on. You can watch this back at youtube.com/thegeekiverse. Of course, we're streaming live at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse, or you can listen on podcast services around the globe. I'm Josiah Leroy. With me today, as always, Mr. Baba Yaga, John Fick. Johnny, that's a nice T-shirt you got there.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Tate Thompson didn't show up to the All-Star game, but still had his shirt printed.
Yeah. You know why? He's busy getting a sunburn.
He's busy getting a sunburn.
That's an upper body injury for sure.
That's a UBI.
I hope no one 5-starred him. That would be horrible.
That would suck.
Anyway, it is what it is. Mr. Tim Talbot. We got Coffee Tim tonight? Who do we got?
Coffee Tim. I'm going to crack open a beer.
There we go.
Later, but...
Beer Tim.
In the same show?
Beer Tim o'clock.
B2.
Beer Tim o'clock. I'm Coffee Joe right now, but we're doing busy sticks after this, and I'm gonna switch over to Beer Joe. So that's how it goes, you know. Find balance in all you do. May the force be with you.
Got the best of all the worlds tonight.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So, fellas, Last of Us here, another heavy episode. If you played the game, you knew some of this was going to be coming. And even though it was on its way, I think it still hit hard in a lot of ways. A little bit different scale than some of the stuff that we saw in episode 3 that I would also consider pretty heavy. But we'll keep it spoiler free here. Your impressions of this episode, we'll start with John.
Another fantastic episode. I mean, I feel like I sound like a broken record at this point, but they just keep continuing to crush it. They did a great job telling that story in a new medium, like we've always been saying. They cut some things, they changed some things, they made it make sense, but it was as devastating and as heartbreaking as we knew it was going to be. Some more really cool gameplay things adapted to the show again. We'll talk more about that once we get to kind of the spoiler section, but yeah, I mean, we're past the halfway point, and man, I've been nothing but impressed, so I can't wait to see how they start to wrap this thing up.
Could not agree more. Tim, your spoiler-free thoughts on this episode.
I think this is my favorite episode so far.
Awesome.
I think it, had a lot of what I was looking for when I envisioned what the show would be. I feel like this kind of checks all the boxes in this episode, which I loved. I'm continuously impressed, and I feel like this is another return back to an episode where you could watch from start to beginning and feel like a movie again. I feel like last episode I talked about how it felt like more like a TV show for the episode. This one I felt like a movie, just from start to finish, and they're tearing my heart out in every episode, I feel like. So, but I love it. I mean, it was so good. It was so well done. As a fan of the game, had a lot of what I wanted to. So
I agree. I think I said last week, episode 4 was my favorite. I think you could almost throw a dart at the wall here. This would be in the running for me as well. It felt different for a few things. Henry and Sam, characters that a lot of us who played the game enjoyed seeing that performance and their story arc. Obviously, we'll get into more spoilers again shortly. I like how much this steered towards feeling like a video game, especially some big battle and action sequences like that. That really captured, I think, the essence of the video games. We finally saw a bloater, which was really cool. I believe that was in the promo for this, so that's fair game. There was a lot of good stuff to take away, a lot of heavy stuff. But I think in terms of pacing, this one kind of start to end felt the most. I think they've all been well paced, but this was the most high action or high octane from beginning to end, even though there were still quiet moments. And I think I even said last week that what makes The Last of Us special to me is some of those moments when you're going in the game from point A to point B and you're having just those little conversations with Ellie and kind of getting her perspective on what life looks like, because she's known nothing but this life, or talking about Joel, who has to explain things to her like what football was. Like, I love that part of the game, those quieter moments that kind of bring humanity back to the forefront in a peaceful, almost loving way. But on the flip side, I also love the action sequences. So to see what we saw here that was very heavily inspired by the video game, and done very well. Again, the execution has been spot on so far. Thought it was really well done. So
I think If you could truncate that 14 to 16 hour experience that is the video game, I think that would be this episode for sure. Like you said, it's got those action high, those set pieces. Some of the best ones that you see in the game are featured in this episode, but it's also got those character moments. It's also got the devastation that the game is known for. So it checks off all those boxes. Like if you're looking for a summary of the emotional roller coaster that is The Last of Us, this episode does a good job at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I think I really enjoyed with this, I loved Kathleen's role. I loved the performance. All of it there added just another wrinkle to the storyline that involves Henry and Sam. And I think we talked about, with Neil Druckmann specifically, what they learned as they developed The Last of Us and then moved on to The Last of Us Part 2. And how a lot of The Last of Us Part 2 surrounds having different perspectives, that you might be hellbent on what you believe is right, and that's good. I think you should be. But there also may be a flip side to it. Right? Like what does the opposite look like? Or what is a person's motivation? Like as we're seeing here, a lot of these enemies, so to speak, or antagonists, they're fleshed out a lot more. They're humanized. They're given reasons why they're doing what they're doing. They're not just chasing people to chase them. And I think the show is doing a really nice job of that. Neil even said in the post-show wrap-up, like he wished he had thought of some of the things we'll talk specifically about, but he wished he had thought of them for the video game. And I love that. I think that's really awesome. What kind of just adds a new layer to it.
What's crazy to me, kind of to tailor off that point a little bit, is just how crazy that is, that if you change your perspective a little bit, and let's say instead of this game, we got a story about a different character that we didn't like, the Kathleen example. Let's say we got her full story off the beginning, and we saw what happened to her. You may feel completely different about what's going on in that game. And I feel like that's why it's so crazy, is that you just change the order that you receive the information. The exact same information can completely change your perspective, because now you've learned something first, and that's what your perception's based off of. And that's so applicable to real life. Your perception's everything. And if you learn something first, it's difficult to unlearn that and relearn something else. And it's just, I feel like it's the perfect example of what they do in the entire show.
That's the Last of Us Part 2 in a nutshell. That's all about perspective. Right. They show you something very specific. They show you right. Yeah, they show you something very specific, and they tell you that you're supposed to hate a character. Then all of a sudden, you get that person's perspective for like 12 hours, and it's very interesting.
But imagine if you played her part first. It's just crazy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yes.
Think about that. Like how you theoretically could be manipulated. Like that's crazy to think of. There's so much in the Last of Us Part 2, just from a philosophical standpoint, that I love, and I can't wait to talk about eventually. I also can't wait for all of my friends who have gotten into the show and have not played or know the Last of Us Part 2 story to see what's going to happen. Like, their minds are going to be blown. Absolutely blown. There's a lot of stuff here in season 1 that is really gut-wrenching and emotional, and I think, people are going to be in for a surprise in the last few episodes based on what we know of the story, but that pales in comparison to what we're going to get in part 2, or season 2, I should say. Buckle up, everybody. It's going to be awesome.
Courtney, I don't want to know. You don't. You
don't. You really don't. There's a reason I've only played the game once.
I don't want to know. Yeah. It's going to be... Dude, it's so funny because, so Courtney's in the chat saying, please don't do this to me. That's like the sentiment that is out there. Like, people, I'm like, give me your theories on what happens. And I love it. It's not to make fun of them, but it's to show how much of it they may be caught off guard on later on. Just saying. We'll leave it at that. But we'll cut it off there. We'll get into spoiler territory for HBO's episode 5 here. So if that is a thing to you, just pause this and come back and watch it later on. But John, did you take notes for this episode?
Yeah, I've got a breakdown here. We'll go through the episode kind of beat by beat like we've done in the past here. There's a lot to get into. Episode 5. This episode starts with Kathleen's people taking over the Kansas City quarantine zone. There's a good chance that's what that city looks like right now after the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl 24 hours ago. It might look very similar. But man, that opening scene was intense. It was brutal. We get Kathleen's people overtaking this Fedra zone, and we get some absolutely torturous imagery. Like they are
Yep.
holding nothing back when it comes to taking over this quarantine zone. They're dragging people through the streets. They're hanging people. Like it is quite the scene. Quite the scene. They're very dark.
It's horrible. It's really intense. I have said a few times so far with this series, I've appreciated how they're showing or not showing violence. For me, who's someone who's always on the edge with this stuff, who I wouldn't say like I get squeamish or anything, but I don't like showing violence for the sake of violence, even if it does suit the story. And I feel like they're still okay. Like this has been fine for me still. So like everyone's got a different tolerance for that. I think I'm somewhere in the middle, and with this, it's been fine. But John, you're right. Like right off the bat, that shows a lot of intensity. It shows what they're capable of. They allude to it later in the episode, basically that if you push people so far, they're going to push back. To paraphrase, and that's exactly what it was. And I got to say, I've really enjoyed in these 2 episodes. Kathleen, the performance by Melanie Linsky, I believe her name is. It's been great. But anyway,
she's also in Yellow Jackets too, and HBO. It's the other show she's on. It's really good.
She's doing an incredible job.
Mm-hmm.
So in the scuffle here, the quarantine zone is being kind of ripped to shreds, and the people are being tortured. We see officially not for the first time, but chronologically for the first time, we're introduced to Henry and Sam. So Henry and Sam are on the run. They're hiding behind a car, and we get confirmation of one of the first big changes here is that Sam is deaf. So in the game, that was not the case. Sam wasn't deaf. He was able hearing. That is something that was added for the show. In the post show, Craig Mazin, the director of the show, said that was his idea. So he pitched that to Neil, and he's like, "What if Sam was deaf?" And hear me out, no pun intended, but that would really make Sam rely on Henry even more so. So yes, he's this young kid. Yes, he's lost in this world. But if he wasn't able hearing, then he would really, really need to rely on his bigger brother. And I thought that worked really well. I thought that was a very interesting and a very real thing that obviously could happen. And like, wow, like what if you're not able to hear in such a bizarre apocalyptic world? Like how dependent you would be on those around you.
When did you know that he was deaf? That's my question.
The end of last episode. I said it to Courtney. The end of.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Once I saw Henry like kind of like shush in the way he did, there was like something extra to that shush. I don't know if he actually signed something or not, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna go this route. I think that Sam's gonna be deaf. And Courtney's like, "How did you know that?" I'm like, "I watch too much TV, man. I don't know."
I really liked it in this episode and the deviation from the video game. It made sense to have that in the game, and the performance there was awesome throughout the episode. I was thinking the same thing as you, John. The way I describe it is, if I were to live in that time with those dangers and things like clickers, like that is suffocating to me. I can't imagine not being able to hear things. And like that's such a thing I think a lot of people take for granted. But imagine being in that scenario. Like you need that. Oh my gosh, that's absolutely crazy. So what a nice way to say that he actually literally has to depend on Henry that much more.
I had no idea he was deaf. We got to the point where they're walking up the stairs and Jamie's like, "Can he not hear?" I'm like, maybe they're just using sign language. Like, I don't think he's deaf in the game. Like, not even like in my head even thinking that he was deaf. And they got into the little hideout and I was like, okay, he's actually deaf. And I'm like, again, it's been a while since I played the game. I'm like, he's not deaf in the game. So
no, he's not. Yeah,
but I liked it. No, I liked it. I thought it was I think they did it so well. So
I don't know if this is going to translate, but the actor that plays Sam in the game is a hockey player. This article is actually on NHL.com right now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's him in a little Boston Bruins jersey. So yeah, he is of course deaf in real life. He doesn't have hearing, and yeah, he's a hockey player. That's actually been circling around the NHL. Is that like this kid is getting a big break in acting, but hey, he's got his roots in hockey.
Imagine that too. Like I that's incredible. So it's hard enough to play hockey at any level, let alone take away one of your senses like that. Incredible, man. That's so awesome. He's doing that, and now he's doing this. Like, kudos. And
I was like just breezing through the NHL article, and the way they refer to him is the 10-year-old forward. Like that just sounds so cool. So awesome.
Projected to go number 1. Hey. I guess it would be like 20. 30.
30, yeah, 2030. Let's give it. Yeah, so that's the first big difference we get here is that Sam is deaf, and that's a bit of a different relationship. So fast forward to the next scene, we get some more ruthlessness from Kathleen here. So we find out that she's got this this group of informants. I forget the term they use, but more or less they're informants that were kind of working for Fedra and snitching on people. And she's got these people caged up, and she's trying to find Henry. She's like, hey, if you just tell me now, I won't kill you guys. I'll just make you do some time and I'll let you guys go. I just need to know where Henry is. And of course, one of them agrees, and Kathleen did not hold her end of the bargain. She sends a firing squad in there, and those people did not see the light of day. So you see how brutal she is right there. We also find out that the reason that she's after Henry is because Henry was one of these informants. So Henry was, kind of working for Fedra a little bit to get something he needed, and we find out that in addition to being deaf, Sam also had leukemia. So as a young boy, right. Sam's got leukemia, and the only way that Henry could get medicine for Sam was through Fedra and was to give them some information, and he gives up Kathleen's brother. So that's where the beef comes into place. Henry basically trades Kathleen's brother, and the fact that he's, starting this revolution with Kathleen in exchange for some leukemia medication. So right there you see the reality of, of what can go down. And none of this is apocalyptic. None of this is zombies. This is all real, human stuff. So it's heavy.
In fact, there's no zombies.
For a while. Until there is.
So Lauren asked me, this is how I had to watch this show, by the way. So it comes out Friday. It comes out 2 days earlier than normal for us. And not able to any night this weekend. Like, it doesn't work out. So today I watched part of it on my lunch break at work. The other part, we had to take a 45-minute drive somewhere today. So I was like, Lauren, can you please drive? I'm going to finish this. So I finish it in the car. And we get home and Lauren asks, what show are you talking about? And I go, The Last of Us. I'm like, remember this game I've been playing basically on and off for 10 years? Kind of sarcastic. She's like, yeah, I only sat and watched a little bit of it with you. I go, no, I know. And she goes, so what's it about? She goes, zombies? I go, no. But there's infected. And then I go, really? It's about survivors and the awful stuff they do to each other.
Right, absolutely.
That was the summary I came to. It was like, she's like, why does that happen? It's not really about fighting the zombies. And I go, no, it's really about the last of the people who are not infected yet. And they just do these terrible things to each other, sometimes in the name of love, which is awful, but they do. And it's just, I don't know, it's bleak. She's just like, why do you watch it? I was like, I don't really know. I was like, but I like it.
Yeah.
So it's very much what it is, though. We talk about perspective, and we alluded to the stuff that happens in the game part 2. But this is an example right here. And they even talked about it post-show, essentially, my brother's more important than your brother, kind of. I'm going to do all these things to save my brother, even if it ends up hurting your brother. All these things that really sum up the philosophy here with the surviving people that are in this awful, awful world. And it's deep, and I like, in a way, that a lot of outsiders who maybe, if they've got cons or anything to say about the show, it's that they're like, it's a zombie show that's not about zombies. Well, it never really was about zombies, so to speak. It is about Joel and Ellie, and in this season, what we're seeing on HBO, it's about all these little subplots and these individual stories, whether it's what we saw in episode 3, it's what we saw in episode 5, so on and so forth. And that we're going to continue to see that trend, I believe, even though, of course, Joel and Ellie are who we're riding with, right?
For sure. Yep. Like we talked about perspectives. That's the one thing the show is affording us the ability to see other people's perspectives. In the first game, we were set on only having the perspective of Joel and Ellie, right? So we couldn't get those side stories. I keep bringing up the second game. Sorry if you're tired of that, but the second game expands on that. They give you other perspective. They let you play as other characters, and you start to experience other perspectives. And that's kind of the trend that this franchise, this IP has been going in is, okay, yes, we have Joel and Ellie. We understand what they went through. We were able to kind of show you how messed up all this stuff was, just kind of in an ancillary way, but let's actually get in there and show you these first person perspectives and what these other people are really going through. So it's deep, it's crazy. we're moving on. Next, we get to spend some time with Henry and Sam hiding out. So they're still on the run from Kathleen. They're looking for a place to stay. They've got very little food. That doctor that we saw in the last episode that we knew was helping them out. This was before he gets killed by Kathleen. He finds them a place to stay. He gets them a little bit of food, and then we get that awesome Super Sam scene where Henry is like the best big brother in the world and really has to live up to that, hero moment and kind of calm the nerves. Shows because Sam just straight up asks him, like, "Are you afraid? Are things going to be okay?" And Henry doesn't believe the answer is yes to that, right? But he's got to somehow put on a brave face and make Sam feel that way. So he takes the paint. He sees that Sam has been painting the superheroes all over the wall because, he's been into the comics he's been finding. So he takes the paint and just slaps it over his eyes. And there we go. We got Super Sam. That was one of the coolest moments.
John, I haven't taken notes on this, but this is the closest I've come so far. The doctor right before that sequence basically says, he's scared because you're scared.
Right.
And
right.
I love that line philosophically from a big brother standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. Like, it's kind of at that moment, I think we saw a transformation. It's okay to be scared, but he buried it because he needed to make his brother feel better, and he needed to make his brother feel brave. And I thought that was so beautiful.
It was awesome.
I think as a dad, you do that all the time.
Yeah,
that's kind of why I really me a lot is like.
Right, and let's be real. That's the relationship here. Henry is no longer Sam's brother. Yeah. That he's the father figure. That is the perspective going on. So as Henry and Sam are hiding out, we get to see a different perspective. The word of the episode on Joel and Ellie's entrance into Kansas City. So we get to see them have that firefight from a bird's eye view from Sam and Henry, kind of looking down on them. And then we kind of see how that whole interaction unfolded. We see that Henry's like, okay, these people obviously are in trouble. They need to get out of here too. Let's set a trap for them. Let's try to get the drop on them, and let's try to talk them into teaming up. And that's what happens, and we kind of get a rehash of the ending of last episode where Henry and Sam have got the guns drawn on Joel and Ellie. We find out that the guns were completely empty; they had no ammo. And in that confrontation, we find out that this is actually different than the game as well. Henry is a non-violent person. He has the line that the most violent thing I've done was point an unloaded gun at you. So him and Joel are having that conversation. He's like, dude, I need you. I need you to get out of here. You need me because I know how to get out of the city, and it's the match made in heaven. We kind of had that dynamic in the game, but it wasn't so spelled out. It wasn't so Henry doesn't like violence and he's not really capable. It was more kind of just a relationship of circumstance. They're kind of both going the same way at the same time. So it's like, we might as well team up and be here together. In the show, they give you some reasons why these two teams kind of fit together like puzzle pieces.
I love when they meet there and the banter that happens when Ellie and Joel are going back and forth. And Joel, like, I knew before she said anything that it was still a little bit funny. Just the way he delivered kind of that stern expression. And she goes, he has an asshole voice or something.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Like, everything's okay.
It was really great. Then she's like, say something else. And then he says it at the same time. Oh, that was great.
I was like, dude. Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah.
I was laughing pretty good there.
Their relationship, it's getting so good. These baby steps, little bits at a time, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. But I'm telling you, man, I really, really like Bella Ramsey in this role. I've said it a lot. I'm a big fan.
Me too. Yeah,
killing it.
I've been at the point where you sign me up for Pedro Pascal. You put his name on something, I'm gonna watch it. I'm so in. He's incredible. He kills everything he does. I'm getting there with that Bella Ramsey too. It's like, man, I need to see her do some more stuff because she's crushing this role. She was plenty of fun in Game of Thrones. What was that?
One of my favorite parts when she's in the basement and she's like. They do something. She's like, "Fuck yeah!" And she gives the little kid the high five. Okay,
yes,
that's awesome.
So funny. I love that little, and that's like the perfect dichotomy of like who she is, right? She's like this, this little girl who's growing up too fast, who thinks she's an adult, so she's dropping F-bombs and stuff like that. But she's sitting down playing with a kid. Like that's still her at heart. It's great.
100%.
We'll dive a little bit more into that in just a minute. So Joel is the muscle and Henry's the pathfinder. They have to find their way out of Kansas City. They've got a common goal here. Joel has begrudgingly agreed to do it, but he knows it's probably his best way out. So how are we getting out of here? Well, let's head to the sewers. Henry explains to us that you might realize something weird about Kansas City. There's not many infected. You haven't seen any, right? We haven't seen a single infected. That's because when Fedra was involved back years ago, they forced all the infected under the sewer, or underground is what he says, and they've done a good job keeping them out. Well, when he proposes the idea of heading to the sewers, Joel's like, dude, what? You just told me that's where the infected are. We're going to go down there. Yeah. And Henry's like, I've heard they're not down there, which is first. It's like, wait a minute. You said they drove them underground, but they're not in there. He's like, yeah, my buddy went in the sewers. They didn't see any. Like, all right, I guess we'll take your word for it. But if they're not in the sewers, where are they? Maybe we'll come back to that. So we're heading in the sewers and we get that really cool underground school scene. So this was something that was also in the game. There's I think it's done really well in the show. I think they sit with that. It's more kind of just a backdrop to what's happening with the characters, but you get to kind of absorb what went on there. You see all the writing on the walls, you see the books, you see the chalk, you see all the stuff. You know for a fact that there was like a school happening down there, and you use your imagination and you start to think about how that played out. In the game, you get to explore a little bit. You get to pick up some notes. You get to find Ishmael and some really, really powerful stuff. And that's probably in the game the most impactful side story, maybe besides Bill and Frank, which at this point I forget was a side story in the game itself. But that's one of the big moments in the game where you're like, man, people existed in this world. A lot went on.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like in the show this was the exact right amount of time, because you're right, John. In the game we explore, we're reading journals. That's mostly how this story is told. But we got the highlights. We got them kind of playing soccer against the wall. Sam and Ellie doing their thing for a bit, and even a little bit of a moment for Joel and Henry to connect. So all of that was really well executed, and again, translated well from the game to the movie or the TV show. Very well.
It did. So we get out of the sewer. We head back up to the ground, and once they hide behind the car, they pop out of the sewer, hide behind the car. I'm like, oh, they're doing it. We're getting the sniper scene. So we kind of alluded to at the beginning of the episode, they find another way to take a piece of gameplay, something that was so much fun and such a big set piece to play in the game, and they figure out a really good way to translate that to live action, to television. And that's what the sniper scene is, man. So they're buckled down behind the car, got this street ahead, you've got this guy in the house, you know exactly where he is, and Joel's got to get to him. I thought that was really, really cool way to bring more gameplay over. It was intense, like it felt intense just like it did in the game.
I love how he said it, and she's like, "You're gonna get shot," and he's like, "It's pitch black, and the dude's a horrible shot."
Yeah, he's got shit aim. It's dark out. I'm fine. Basically, just like whatever, man. I'm not getting shot. It's a video game.
He is an NPC.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. He's an NPC.
I love how they justify that though, because like, he used to run up. I love how they actually like brought it up.
Yeah, he says something, and like, again, it's dark enough, and there's enough cover, and he gets around the side. That's what we do in the game too. Is we kind of just book it to that. I went to the right side, not the left side in the game. Well, it's okay. I'm sure the left side could have got you there too. So Joel gets behind the gun. He gets the drop on the guy. He takes him out. That was a pretty cool scene too. He's like, dude, don't do it. Like you just drop the gun. Stay here for an hour. I'm letting you live. Just don't do anything stupid. It's like, please don't do it. What does the guy do? He does it. He tries to point the gun at Joel, and Joel takes him out. So Joel gets behind the gun. He kind of pulls up the scope, and he realizes quickly that Kathleen's people are right behind. So he's yelling, come, let's go. And that's another, gameplay point we got in the game is like we got to sit behind that sniper and defend Ellie and Sam and Henry. So another cool way to see what that looks like from a live action point of view. And then just as things are starting to heat up, they kind of got the drop on him. Henry's stuck behind a car. He's about to give himself up. What happens? The ground falls out, man. The pit just falls. So that was kind of the teaser we got during last episode. The ground was sinking, and Kathleen was like, dude, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it later. Obviously, we knew that was going to be a problem, and then we get that line early on in this episode from Henry that, they put all the infected underground. Start to add up, that's not going to go well. And it certainly doesn't go well. The ground falls out, and man, so many infected. It looked insane, man. It looked wild. And what really stood out to me was so much of that, if not most of that, was practical effects. That was all prosthetics. That was not a a World War Z CGI, mass generated infected zombies. These were people in prosthetics, like really like moving very freakily and sprinting, and like so stressful is the word I'll say. Like that ground explodes, and I am just stressed.
Dude, that was intense to say the least. They talked about in the post show how they basically had boot camp for all of these stunt people to figure out how to move and how to run. I love that. Like that's so awesome.
Yeah, and you need that because it wouldn't have worked without it. You would have had to gone CG if you couldn't get that movement down.
What's crazy is as that happens, I'm like sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, the PS3 couldn't have handled that scene."
No, it sure couldn't have.
That is way too many characters on the screen at once.
There's so many, you know.
Would have taken the power of the PlayStation 4 for that one. Days gone, baby.
Think about like Dead Rising on
360.
Xbox One. They're like 500 zombies on screen at once.
Yes, Dead Rising 3.
That was so much fun.
When that happened, honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if we were gonna get the horde like that. I kind of just expected the bloater. I was like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be crazy. It's just gonna be the bloater going towards the 20 people with guns. They're not going to be able to take them down, and then they're going to hear all of that noise, and they're going to get more infected, I guess, running their way. Well, I was wrong. I was completely wrong, and it was crazy.
It's worth noting for people who haven't played the game that that's not really a thing in the game. They don't really travel in hordes like that. They don't have these nests, these hive minds. So to see that from that's a fresh new look at the infected for us. Like, wow, what a presence. And yeah, Joe, you mentioned it already. That bloater. I mean, if you looked at the trailers, you saw the promotional art, you knew that was coming. We'd faced when in the game you face a bloater back when you're with Bill. So we've been there, done that in the game, but we haven't seen it in live action yet. And that thing was terrifying, dude. Brutal. Now that one, they used some CGI with that, obviously, because the bloater just straight up picks up a dude and rips his head. I'm like, yo, what is going on?
What's his face?
Yeah, it was the voice actor who for Tommy.
They do it the same way they do it in the game, where they grabs underneath the jaw and
yes, Jeffrey Pierce, right?
Before he goes, he grabs it right on the bottom jaw.
Not gonna lie, I was really worried they were gonna do that, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this. So,
lucky it was
in relation to that, I was really happy that they just ripped his head out.
Right, it was far away. You didn't get too much of the gore behind it, but yeah, that was Jeffrey Pierce's character, the voice actor from Tommy. And once he was gone, I knew that everybody was gone. I'm like, all right, so this is over. Kathleen's people no longer exist. Once he went down, I knew they were all going down. We get that creepy little girl, dude. Like if you've seen the movie,
clicker,
the kid clicker, dude. I just saw the movie Megan, like that creepy AI robot. I saw that a few weeks ago. Lots of Megan vibes from that kid clicker who is trapped in a car with Ellie, which was terrifying.
I heard she's like a gymnast,
was brutal,
flipped over.
Oh, for sure, dude.
Crazy.
I don't recall ever seeing one of those in the game at all. Right?
We didn't even get other than spoilers for the next couple of minutes here. Other than Sam, I don't even think we got kid infected at all.
Yeah, I think you're right. That was crazy to me. I remember seeing that and I was like, "What is this?"
Really off-putting.
If I could gripe a little, which is weird. This is nitpicky, and I know you have to tell the story and move on, and these are not, so to say, prominent characters. But Perry, I think his name is Jeffrey Pierce. So
okay.
Let's go with that. Anyway, the way he this is such a dumb complaint, but the way he stands there just kind of is like, go. You're like, no shit, Sherlock. Of course this thing's going to run at you. And I know sometimes you're like, hey, I'm going to create a diversion so you can get away. I don't know. That felt like just a little cheap. Like, couldn't he have been mowed down instead?
Yeah,
or
corny.
A last line of defense. Again, very, very nitpicky here. I know that. Then the same thing a little bit with Kathleen. Like that kid clicker comes out of nowhere, but there's like a second where she kind of just stares at it, and I'm like, bro, again, maybe turn and run, and then it gets her. Again, these are stupid. I admit that, but this is what I'm thinking during that sequence. Yeah, and then of course I forgot about it very, very quickly.
But hey, if it takes you out of it, it takes you out of it. For me, it was a good moment because it was that I have no chance. There's no use in trying to even move. Like my life is over, and it's happening in a very dramatic way. But I totally see where you're coming from. I could see how that could have hit differently. It's like, why are you just standing there? At least try to move.
It was a very rare blip to mediocre, whereas everything in the show has been outstanding quality so far. So even if it gets to just average, to me it's like, that's a drop off. But again, What are we talking about here?
Yeah, dropping a bucket is what I meant to say. Who's dropping things in hats? So yeah, so we get our crew gets away from that whole horde. Kathleen's group is torn apart, and then if you've played the game, we're heading to the scene that we all know is coming and that we're all dreading. So we get back to the apartment. We've got Henry, Sam, Joel, and Ellie, and they're all kind of just hanging out, decompressing, eating some food, chilling. Ellie and Sam are hanging out in the bedroom, and it's worth noting this goes down a little bit differently in the game. So we quickly we get a conversation with Sam and with Ellie. Sam starts to ask a couple of big picture questions, like I forget if this was in the game or if it was in Friday's episode, but he starts to ask questions like, "Do you believe that these people are still alive in there?" Right? I think that was
in the game.
I think I think it actually might be in both. I think it's. Just,
I saw it side by side. It was. I heard that every single line that he says is also the same lines that he says in the game, even if it's written out. They're the same.
Got it. So
for
it's
him at least.
So it's basically the same conversation where he starts to ask these big.
Hers is a little different, but yeah.
Right. Ask these questions like, "Do you believe these people are alive in there?" And Ellie says, "I go back and forth on it, and I'm not so sure." But in the game, you don't get Ellie doesn't realize that Sam is bitten until the next morning.
Right.
Ellie sleeps in a different room, and it's a reveal the next morning where she goes to wake him up. In the show, Sam shows Ellie right away. She's like, "Hey," she rolls up the sleeve like, "I'm bitten, like this is a situation." And we kind of get this interesting scene where Ellie kind of goes into panic mode, and she goes into this mode where it's like, "Oh my God, like holy shit, you're bitten, you're going to die, but oh my, like my blood is the cure, I guess." She kind of goes full panic mode and cuts her hand and rubs her blood on Sam's bite. Like, and in that moment, I don't know if she is just doing it to try to make Sam feel better. I don't know how much of it she truly believes, or if like I said, it's just that full panic mode. But that desperation is very apparent. That it's just like time is ticking, and this is no good at all.
I think she believes it.
You think she believes that she could have actually used her blood? Hey,
because even like when he wakes up, she's not like thinking that he's not okay. You know what I mean?
Right. So yeah, Sam asks, "Hey, will you stay up all night with me?" And of course, Ellie, being a human being, does not stay up all night. She falls asleep, and she wakes up to Sam infected. And that's kind of the scene that we get in the game, is that they're in that room together. Sam attacks her. They bust through the door, and this goes down exactly as it does in the game, and it is just as brutal. That Joel and Henry obviously know what's going on. Joel goes to pick up a gun, but Henry stops him and basically takes the situation in his control. He freezes. Obviously doesn't want to shoot his little brother, but quickly has to do something. He pulls the trigger. He kills the infected Sam, and then you get that awful realization of what is he about to do? Like, is he really about to go? Like in the game, he gets a little bit more aggressive. In the game, he points the gun at Joel and says, "This is all your fault. This is all your fault," and then quickly turns it on himself. In the show, we kind of get more of that internal struggle. We just kind of know that, okay, like I don't think he's going to be able to live with this situation, and he's holding a gun, so this is not going to go well, and it doesn't go well. Henry turns the gun on himself, and it is every bit as terrible as it was in the game.
Yeah, the way that was shot too, how this is purposeful, right? Like it shows Ellie's point of view. It kind of zooms in on her face as that happens, as he shoots himself, and the point there, I think, is Ellie is seeing some stuff that, even though she's lived in this dreadful, dreadful world, that's a really, really horrible thing for anyone at any time to see. And this is the kid, and she has to see that. So like that's part of the hardening of her story, and I think the sensitivity, and on top of it, her connection with Joel.
And add the context that these are maybe the first friends that she's made in years. I mean, probably since Riley, this is the first time she's been able to kind of get close to another kid and, find this group, and to see, and it has to be impactful for her to see Joel let these people in, because they just had the conversation where Joel's like, "Hey man, like come with me. We're heading to see my brother. Like come on for the ride. Like you guys are good people. Like let's do this together." So her, seeing Joel let these people into their lives, and for it to end like that, yeah. So after that, we get something that's not in the game. Joel and Ellie bury their bodies. Felt fitting in the game. The game kind of had to end abruptly because it doesn't have the leisure of set endpoints like TV shows do, right? Like the game, you can play the game as long as you want. So they kind of had to give you this definitive ending. Like in the game, Henry turns the gun on himself. A guitar strums, and then it changes to fall. It cut to black, it goes to fall, and you're left to sit with that for a few seconds, like, oh my God, like that's how quickly everything can go to shit in this world. And like, boy, did it just go to shit. In the show, you get a little bit of that. You get to reflect for a second. And then you get the scene with Joel and Ellie burying the bodies. So they go outside, dig the holes, bury the bodies. It's very somber. But boy, when Ellie brings that kind of etch-a-sketch thing that Sam was communicating with, the pen and paper, and she just tosses it on his grave, and it just says, "I'm sorry," and she walks away. Man, that was maybe one of like the one moments in the show so far that it's just been like a specifically like, I don't know, just really messed me up. Really messed me up, man.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And there's three things that I kind of thought of, as while watching that. So the fact that he was deaf, and the only way you can, make him want to know that you're there after he turns is by tapping on his shoulder, which is exactly what Ellie has to do. And that's when he turns around is, she has to get close to him. She has to like initiate some type of contact. And he's just sitting on the bed. And I was just so hard to watch. And then the other thing I thought about too a lot is that, that's the first time he's ever killed anyone was his brother. He spent all this time trying to save everyone. He's not a violent person like he was in the game. In this one, that's the only person he's ever killed was, his own brother. And I feel like that's just hit me so hard after. And one thing I didn't notice at the time, but read a lot, but I guess Joel didn't bring his backpack with him when he left the truck, or didn't have his backpack with him or something. And that the backpack that he has at the end is supposedly Henry's backpack. I don't know if you noticed that or not, or if I'm just kind of on a tangent here, but suppose that's what I heard. So
interesting.
I'll have to go back and watch, but that's like, I suppose that's what Ellie gives him is Henry's backpack.
Oh,
so that's what she throws down on him or whatever at the end.
Right.
So
it's heavy, man. It's a very, very, like if I had a nickel for how many times I can say that these episodes have just been ending in a gut wrenching way, but that's The Last of Us. That's what it is.
Yeah, this is the definition of The Last of Us, that entire episode, like the roller coaster of emotions of, the feeling of, happiness that you just made it through and, you're on the other side, and then just the realization that it, didn't come without a cost kind of thing. So
absolutely.
I feel like at this point in the season, it mirrors a lot, of course, where I was at in the game, where I've just been like, I don't want to say numb to all of it, because I definitely feel the different emotions that they want you to feel and experience that from a viewership standpoint, but almost like dejected, not in a bad way, but like, all right, what's next? What else can we possibly withstand? It's hit after hit, and we've seen a lot, and we're only, just a little over halfway through. But like we've said, based on what we know of the video game story, got 4 episodes left. There's at least 2 really, I mean, there'll be more than this, but like 2 moments that come to mind that are going to be really tough for people to watch, which we'll get to in the coming weeks. But it doesn't make it any easier knowing that what we're going to see, or at least the outline of what we're going to see. And I can't imagine being like a new viewer at this point, someone who is not familiar with the lore of The Last of Us. I love that. Again, I mentioned it last week, whether you are new to it or you're like us who are a little bit seasoned vets with this story, it doesn't matter. And that maybe is the sign of how well this is all being executed and how well it's been written and rewritten when we come to the video game, and then rewritten for TV. So this episode is just another example of that. This is a microcosm again. Some of these feel like self-contained like stories within this greater arc, and you can watch them one off if you need to. But man, I think the payoff's going to be big, especially once we get to the tail end of this season here.
So really quickly here. So supposedly, I just looked it up just as we're talking. So he does get Henry's backpack, and supposedly that's the backpack he uses in the game version in The Last of Us Part 2.
Interesting. Yeah, not something I picked up on.
Yeah, I saw a TikTok on it, of course, because felt like I was avoiding, because I didn't watch it on Friday because I forgot. So we watched it Saturday night, and every time I turn my phone on, I'm like, oh, gotta scroll back past this quick because it's a spoiler for something I didn't watch yet. So
right.
Yeah, that could be tough.
Yeah,
it is tough. So that's episode 5. This show just continues to be insanely authentic to what The Last of Us is, and also awesomely additive, in these extra scenes and these extra episodes that we're getting. Man, I think we had some incredible expectations for what this show was going to be, and it's getting better and better every week.
I agree. Well said. Tim, any closing thoughts? Anything we missed at all?
No, just every week I'm like, oh, I forgot it was on Friday, and I was like, my wife was out, and I'm like, she needs to get home right now so we can watch this before Saturday because they're so excited. So it's been awesome. What a ride.
Yeah, I've enjoyed, as we talked about, kind of the water cooler moments and talking about it, obviously on this show, but also with our various circles that we're involved in and friends at work, all that good stuff. That's what makes really releases like this so special. So definitely we are enjoying our time here with The Last of Us on HBO so far, 5 episodes down. We're going to wrap things up here. If you are watching live, streaming live at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse, Hangout, John and I are going to transition over after a quick break to Busy Sticks, which is our all video game talk show that we do weekly. If you are a fan of this series where we've been recapping The Last of Us, you can check it out at youtube.com/thegeekiverse if you missed any episodes, or put it on the podcast and listen wherever you may download podcasts. And of course, we are also streaming live every week. We've been trying to do Monday or Tuesday nights with this, so set a bookmark or a reminder on Twitch, and you'll get that notification every time we go live. So for John and for Tim, I'm Josiah. Thanks for joining us for this episode of HBO's The Last of Us Recapped. We will catch you all very soon. Have a wonderful week.